We never intended to fall in love, but the heart wants what it wants, and that's what happened. When you work with someone for a long time, it's natural to get close, but we got too close. It's funny because Brenda worked remotely and lived 2 states away from me, but she had to come in 4 times a year for quarterly meetings, and let's just say we hit it off quickly. Our romantic and intimate relationship continued for several years until the guilt became so strong that she ended our relationship. "I'm sorry, Brian, but I can't do this anymore," she said. I was devastated, but I also knew it was the best decision for both of us. Although we were deeply in love and would do anything for each other, one thing we both refused to do was end our current marriages. We remained friends, best friends, and told each other everything. Yes, we discussed our sex life, or lack thereof. Conversations sometimes included stories about our previous experiences with both our current spouses and former partners. Sometimes we talked about our sexual fantasies and desires. Over time, our conversations became more and more sexually detailed over the phone. Brenda and I still loved each other, still desired each other, and gave in to desire again over the phone. I usually started sexual conversations by asking questions about her experiences and fantasies. Questions on sexual topics became more and more frequent. One of the issues that often came up in our conversations could ultimately destroy our relationship. "Okay, Brenda, I have a question for you." I could literally hear Brenda rolling her eyes. "Okay, Brian, what's the question this time?" she answered, laughing. "If we were still together, and I gave you permission for one night with the condition that we both had to know this person, would you take advantage of this opportunity? And who would you choose?" I didn't think she would actually say she would take the opportunity, but if she did, I was 90% sure I would know who she would choose. And I was not mistaken. Without thinking, she blurted out, "Evan." I made fun of her because I expected her to say Evan, who was a supplier we both worked with at our company. Over time, we became friends too, although after Evan left the company, we lost contact a little. From time to time, I returned to this topic, but she usually tried to quickly change the subject. Over time, we were unable to physically meet as life got in the way. Among the obstacles in our lives, my wife struggled with several autoimmune diseases, and Brenda's husband had heart problems and some neurological problems that he never got around to diagnosing. Life became difficult for both of us, as we often had to take care of those we loved and belonged to. Bobby, Brenda's husband, suffered a severe stroke and sadly died soon after. It was very difficult for her and their sons, and I tried to support her as a friend as best I could. However, soon after, my wife Marcy also lost her fight. This threw me off track. We didn't have children, and I always took for granted how much Marcy did regarding our finances. Not only had I lost my wife, the woman I had deeply loved my entire life, but I now had to figure out how to survive financially and how and when to pay all the bills. Some time passed, and we both started to get used to our new lives when I took the time to visit her. It was awkward at first because it had been so long since we had seen each other, but soon it felt like no time had passed at all. By that time, she was already working for another company and couldn't work remotely, so I asked my boss to let me work remotely so I could move to another state. I was not really needed in the office, so he agreed, provided that I would come once a quarter or as needed, since sometimes help was needed in the warehouse. At first, I moved into an apartment next to her house, but soon I was already living with her. Although neither of us were young, we made love constantly. Perhaps 3 times a week on weekdays and twice a day on weekends. And even if I could never be intimate with Brenda, the fact that I was with her, that I lived with her, made me the happiest person in the world, and I did everything I could to make her happy as well, like me. As with any relationship, no matter how hot it starts, the passion cools down over time, at least to some extent. I don't know if we got bored, but our relationship almost turned into a routine. It didn't bother me. I still loved Brenda more than anything in the world, and I still enjoyed the sex, even if it wasn't as exciting as before. But what bothered me was that it seemed like Brenda was getting bored with our sex life. Our lovemaking no longer brought her the same joy as before, and all I wanted was to make her happy, no matter the cost. so I brought up that old topic again. Hey, Brenda, remember that scenario I mentioned a while ago about the resolution and Evan? I asked nervously. She rolled her eyes, sighed, and answered irritably. You never let me forget it. Of course I remember. Why are you doing this? You lift now? Well, what do you think about it? Would you do it? If he agreed, would you agree? I asked. Look at me, I doubt he'll want to, she said, not seeing what everyone else saw. She continued, it would be fun, but why are you suggesting it? I didn't want to show that I liked this idea. I couldn't let Brenda find out about it. So the answer I gave wasn't entirely truthful, although there was some truth in it. I just want you to have fun. I want you to be happy. I think one night with the man you're so attracted to. I have felt attraction for a long time. It can bring you joy that you have not experienced for a long time. I want to organize this for you, but there is one condition. Brenda interrupted me. Wait. I'm not sure I really want this, do I? I walked up to her, hugged her, and kissed her. But I needed to answer her question and finish what I wanted to say. Brenda, if you're asking do I want to, we both already know the answer. I put my finger to her lips to keep her quiet until I finished before she objected. The only thing I ask in return is that you tell me all the details, and that you answer all my questions about that night honestly. There was silence for what seemed like an eternity, although it was probably about a minute. Finally, she spoke, clearing her voice. I agree, I think. Obviously, only if you really want it. I still don't fully understand why you're suggesting this, since I should be yours, but I can't deny that it sounds fun. Do you think he'll agree? I was already excited and my heart was pounding, but I tried to control my excitement as I responded, I'll contact Evan. I won't bring it up right away, but I'll ask over time and see what he says. And with these words, I took her hand and led her to the bedroom. I knew that she really agreed with the idea of permission. The next morning, while at work, I wrote to Evan on Messenger. Hey Evan, haven't talked in a while, how are you? We talked a little about how things were going, but then I decided to call him on the phone and ask, how are you doing with your relationships? Any girls or anything? Evan laughed. No, I go on dates sometimes, but I can't seem to settle down again. My ex-wife left a scar that was too deep, you know. I laughed too and replied, yes, I understand. It's a pity. You're one of the best guys I know. In general, since we last talked, a lot has changed in my life. Firstly, my wife passed away a couple of times. Years ago. Evan immediately interrupted. Oh man, I'm so sorry. How are you coping? The next part really surprised him. Well, it's easier because now I live with my girlfriend, Brenda. What? Evan shouted into the phone. Haha, didn't expect that, did you? Yeah, the truth is, we always had feelings for each other. We both had spouses die, and we ended up together. But Evan, that's not the strangest thing you will hear in this conversation. Evan was silent for a moment, and then said with a slight laugh, ha ha, okay, let's see what could be weirder than that. I took a deep breath because this was the moment of truth. Evan, I know you and Brenda had something between you. He tried to say something, but I interrupted him and continued. I know that nothing happened between you, but I know that there was an attraction. I know about some conversations that you had and heard you flirting on the phone. And no, it doesn't bother me. That's not why I'm raising this question. Evan asked, okay, so what are we talking about then? I smiled from ear to ear as I continued. Brenda and I have talked about this a lot, and she has a one-day permit. She can choose whoever she wants to spend the night with, as long as I know that person too. And, Evan, I wasn't surprised when she chose you. So yes, I suggest you spend the night with my girlfriend if you're willing to spend time with her. There was dead silence for a few seconds before he cleared his throat and spoke. So you're saying I can have sex with your girlfriend, Brenda, for one night? And you're both okay with that? I nodded, even though he couldn't see it, and before I could answer the phone, Evan said, it's weird, man. It's weird as hell, but yeah, I can't pass up this opportunity. We both laughed awkwardly, me out of relief, him out of nervousness. We finished our conversation, and I'm sure his thoughts were racing as fast as mine. Over the next days and weeks, Evan and I planned the details, the date, time, and location of the meeting. Evan lived 3 states away, so Brenda and I took some time off and planned a trip, staying at a hotel near his home. Evan was supposed to pick her up and bring her back the next day. In the weeks leading up to that evening, Brenda and Evan began texting and talking again. They were probably catching up and flirting a lot, I'm sure. I wasn't there when they talked on the phone, and I didn't ask what they were texting about, but I'm guessing a lot of it had to do with what was about to happen. Finally, as the day approached, Brenda and I climbed into our Nissan for the 10-hour drive. Since check-in was at 1 p.m. and I didn't want to leave in the middle of the night, we booked a room at a hotel halfway through. The approximately 5-hour drive that day was quiet. We didn't talk about Evan or what was going to happen the next day. The conversations concerned little things and nothing more. I think we were both pretty nervous. We held hands briefly during the ride, but that was about as intimate as we got. We arrived in a small town, had dinner, and then a drink in the hotel bar. A double shot of Maker's Mark with ice, and then a final shot without ice helped me relax. We returned to the room, and nothing happened. Brenda wasn't in the mood. I think she had too many thoughts about what was going to happen the next day, but I was a little annoyed by it. I let it go, and we went to bed. Drinking helped me fall asleep quickly. We woke up early the next day as we had to leave no later than 8 in the morning. I really wanted to arrive at the hotel promptly at 1 o'clock since Evan had to pick Brenda up at 3, and I wanted to relax and give her enough time to get ready if needed. So we left at 8 in the morning and stopped at McDonald's for breakfast on the way. Just like the day before, the conversations were small, but this time something was different. We were both excited, it was obvious. Brenda wouldn't admit it, but it was true. Our conversations were much livelier, and there was a bit of flirting, a lot more than the day before. We arrived at the hotel a little after 1 p.m. We checked in and took our bags to our room. As soon as we got into the room and put our bags in place, Brenda immediately started texting someone and smiled a lot. I have to admit, this was starting to worry me a little. I started to get jealous. She was going to spend the whole night with Evan, but right now she was in the room with me, and I just wanted some attention. After all, I was the one who allowed this to happen. She finished texting and plugged her phone into the charger on the table next to the bed. She took her bag, walked up to me, kissed me on the lips, then quickly disappeared into the bathroom. I was left alone with my thoughts and nothing else. I thought about looking at her phone number, but refrained. I turned on the TV and tried to distract myself while I waited for her to return from the bathroom. I waited and waited and waited. I heard the shower turn on, and then the hairdryer, but nothing else for over an hour. It was about 2:45 when she finally came out. My jaw dropped. She was wearing a new dress, and her makeup was better than usual. I couldn't take my eyes off her in this new black and red dress that was elegant and sexy, but also classy and not too revealing. She probably looked better than ever. But something was wrong. Even though she looked beautiful, her face showed sadness. Did she doubt it? I was the first to speak. "Brenda, you look amazing. I'm jealous that you don't dress like that for me," I laughed. "But what's wrong? Why do you look upset?" She looked at me, her eyes seemed to almost cry, but she still managed to smile a little and said, "I don't have to dress like that for you. I can walk into a room in rags, and you'll still be delighted with me." She wasn't wrong. She continued, "But nothing happened. I'm fine. Everything is fine." Her voice faded, and she lowered her head. I jumped to my feet, took her hands, and looked into her eyes. "Brenda, are you okay?" "Brian, I don't know if I want to do this. Are you sure you really want me to do this?" Before she could say anything else, I kissed her. She laughed and took my face in her hands and lifted it to meet my eyes again. "I'm serious. We can call this whole thing off, and I can stay here, and we can just spend time together. I just don't know if I want to do this." I knew what she wanted, but she was afraid that I didn't want her to do it. But I wanted this for her, and I wanted to know all the details the next day. Brenda, honey, you clearly love the thought of meeting Evan. You want it, and I want it for you. She looked me in the eyes, blushing and smiling. Okay, you're right. I'm looking forward to it, but he's about to arrive, and I don't want to be too broken before he takes me. It was a little disappointing, but I understood her words. However, I needed a little attention. I kissed her. Her phone vibrated. She pushed me away and said irritably, "See, I told you he'd be here soon, and you're trying to make me broken. That's enough. I need to go." "Damn," I whispered. Brenda walked over to her phone and picked it up. "Yes, he's here, waiting in the parking lot. I have to go," she said, clearly distracted. She picked up her purse and quickly headed towards the door. I had to literally run after her and grab her hand so that she would stop and not leave like that without saying goodbye. "Hey, you could at least say goodbye," I said with a smile, so she knew I wasn't angry. She laughed, kissed me, and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so nervous I don't know what I'm doing. Are you still sure about that?" I kissed her again and said, "Yes, I think your body wants it. I want it for you. I love you more than anything in this world, Brenda." "I love you too, Brian. Thank you for this. See you in the morning." She quickly kissed me on the cheek and left without saying another word. After she left, I went to the window, pulled back the curtains, and looked out. I saw a red pickup truck running outside the hotel. I assumed it was Evan. I watched as my beautiful girlfriend walked out of the hotel and walked over to the truck. Evan actually came out to meet her. He hugged her. I wondered if they would kiss right away, but after a quick hug, he held the door for her and she sat inside. He looked her up and down as she entered the car, but she didn't notice. He closed the door, walked around to the driver's side, got into the car, and they drove off. I was left alone in my room. My heart was pounding. Tears began to appear in my eyes. I literally had groin pain, my stomach hurt, I was on the verge of tears, and my thoughts were racing in 100 directions at once. I felt nauseous, but I was terribly excited. Did I do something wrong? At that moment, it seemed to me that yes. But now, what was I going to do for the next 18 hours? It was just after 3 o'clock, and I was starting to feel hungry, but I was afraid to go out to eat for fear of seeing them together. I ordered room service. Ordered pizza from a local pizzeria. I turned on the TV, but mostly scrolled through various social networks while I waited for the pizza. Although I was very hungry when I ordered the pizza and should have eaten a lot, after 2 small bites, I lost my appetite. I was nervous. I kept thinking about what was happening, imagining it. It was a strange feeling, as if I was against and at the same time for. And it was only 5 p.m. when I stopped eating and closed the pizza box. I wanted to go straight to the hotel bar, but I knew I had some time to kill, so I went for a walk. I was walking around the hotel area and starting to feel better when I passed a nice steakhouse, and I swear I saw Evan's truck there. I thought that this was the end of my walk. I had enough fresh air and decided to return and settle down at the bar. I sat down at the counter and ordered a double Maker's Mark. He left quickly. The second one is just as fast. But my thoughts still revolved around what was happening. Are they already having sex? While I sat at the bar, trying to cope with the internal struggle in my head and heart, Brenda sat next to Evan in a private booth at the same steakhouse I passed by. At this point, the waiter brought their food, and they began to enjoy their steaks. While drinking didn't help me forget or make me feel better or worse, it definitely got me drunk. Even though it was still early morning, I realized that I had drunk enough and didn't want to be sick the next day, especially since I wanted to enjoy the moment by asking Brenda about all the details. I returned to the room and spent the rest of the evening there. I was mostly on the phone to pass the time and also to constantly check to see if she had texted me. The steak was tasty and the cocktails were great. Both Evan and Brenda felt great after dinner. They wasted no time in paying and leaving the restaurant, starting the short drive to Evan's house. He soon pulled into his driveway and they sat in the car for a few minutes, staring at each other in silence before Evan got out and opened the door for her. I had no idea if they went out to dinner or if he took her straight to his house to start. Of course, this is exactly what happened in my imagination. If they haven't had sex yet, they've probably already started. This thought turned my stomach and excited me at the same time. Evan helped Brenda out of the car and took her hand as they walked up the few steps to the front door. Before entering, they stood again, simply looking into each other's eyes. It seemed like they had both been waiting for this moment for years. They hugged, then moved away from each other to look into each other's eyes again. They felt both of their hearts beating faster. But there was no hurry. They had the whole night to enjoy each other's company and bodies. The plan was to take Brenda back to the hotel by 9, and so they would have plenty of time to enjoy each other. They hugged a little more before Evan said quietly, "Let's go inside and get a drink." Brenda simply nodded and followed Evan. Evan showed Brenda to the living room and said that she could sit down and he would return with the wine. He quickly returned with an open bottle of Cabernet and 2 glasses. He poured them both some wine and turned on some soft music. Evan sat down next to her, took his glass, they clinked glasses, and Evan said, "To an unforgettable evening." They both said, "Let's clink glasses," and took a sip. They put the glasses down and Evan took her hands. His voice shook slightly. "I've always thought you were attractive, but I can't believe how well this dress fits you. But I also can't wait to take it off of you. I'm sure your bra and panties are just as pretty." They both laughed. He kissed her. They had sex. I woke up and looked at my phone to see if Brenda had texted me. I assumed she should have texted me to tell me how it went, or at least to let me know that she was okay. But all I saw when I picked up the phone was the time 11:38 p.m. "What the hell?" I said to myself. I put my phone down, stared at the ceiling, and started thinking about how much I missed my beautiful Brenda. Then I also started thinking about the pleasure she must have felt. I didn't take a cold shower, but I made it so it wasn't hot. It helped me stay calm and gave me a pleasant feeling. After my shower, I thought about texting Brenda, but decided I'd rather text her in the morning when I woke up, unless I heard from her first. I thought I would have trouble falling asleep, so I took a sleeping pill and passed out within minutes. I woke up around 7:30 am. The sun was shining through the window. The first thing I did was grab my phone and see. Nothing again. My stomach immediately twisted with anxiety. How could she not write to me even once? Does she really forget about me while she's having sex with Evan? I decided that another shower would help me wake up fully, and then I would text her after I got out of the shower. The shower really perked me up, and as I concentrated on washing my hair and the rest of my body, I was able to take my mind off things and then stepped out of the shower. I dried myself off, brushed my teeth, got dressed, and picked up the phone. I wrote, "Hi, honey. Did you have a good time?" I put down the phone, turned on the TV, and waited for an answer. This time, Evan woke up before Brenda. He looked at his watch. It was just after 7:30 am. He could have slept some more, but he knew that soon he would need to take Brenda back to the hotel. He stood up when he heard Brenda's voice. "Hey, where are you going?" Evan cleared his throat before saying almost sternly, "Look, I'm usually a gentleman, but I have one rule in the house that you might find a little rude." Brenda swallowed nervously. Okay. What's the rule?" "The owner of the house gets what he wants." They had sex again. He simply said, "Why don't you take a shower while I make us breakfast?" Ha ha. Evan left the room. Brenda lay there a little longer, recovering. She then picked up her phone and replied to the message. "Yes, everything went well. I'll be at the hotel soon. Thanks again for allowing this." She went into the shower and washed herself. Then she dressed again in the same clothes she arrived in and headed to the kitchen. Evan laughed. "Ha ha, I guess we didn't think this through, but I can give you some sweatpants if you don't want to come back wearing that." "You know what? No, I'll stay in this. It'll remind me of the amazing night and morning ha-ha we had." Evan smiled softly. "Sounds good. Now, it's not much, but I cooked some eggs and fried some bacon." They ate, Evan showered, and they hit the road. On the way back to the hotel, they held hands and talked about the night they spent. They talked about how they knew it was an isolated incident, and they were both very grateful that I allowed it to happen. They were a little sad that they had to break up, and that it would never happen again. They understood why it had to be this way, but it didn't make them any less sad. It was 9 a.m., and I started looking out the window, expecting to see a red truck pull up. I watched for about 5 minutes when this red truck actually pulled up. For several minutes, no one got out of the car. I assumed they were saying goodbye to each other. Then Evan got out and walked around the car to open the door for her. He was wearing a t-shirt and loose jeans. She came out in the same dress she left in. They hugged. Then they kissed. She must have said something. He smiled, and as far as I could tell from his lips, he said, "Me too." With these words, she turned around, looked up at the window, and I quickly jumped to the side so that she would not notice that I was watching them. She then walked back into the hotel. Evan left, and Brenda headed back to our room. I lay back on the bed, pretending I was just playing on my phone as if nothing special had happened. I pretended to be surprised when she entered. "Oh, hi, you're back," I said with a hint of feigned surprise. She laughed mockingly. "I saw you in the window, naughty boy." We both laughed, and I got out of bed to hug her. I hugged her tightly with love. However, she did not respond with the same passion as I did. This did not stop me because my beloved was again in my arms. I kissed her on the... Then she said, okay, not now." I sighed and stepped back. I assumed she was tired, and I had questions anyway. "Have you had breakfast? Do you want to take a shower?" She thought for a moment, then a blissful smile appeared on her face, and she quietly replied, "Yes, I had breakfast, and yes, I already took a shower." I smiled, knowing that now she would begin to tell me all the details about the previous evening. "Great. So, can you tell me everything that happened?" Brenda sighed heavily and said, "Okay, Brian, but give me a couple of minutes. Let me change into regular clothes." She grabbed her overnight bag and went into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. I was hoping she would wear this dress a little longer, but this did not happen. I waited patiently, sitting on the edge of the bed. It seemed like an eternity before that door finally swung open. She came out of the bathroom wearing black leggings and a loose gray t-shirt. Even though the dress was extremely sexy, she had never realized how good she looked in such a casual outfit. She wore nothing under her t-shirt, no panties, no bra. She came up to me and asked, "Well, what do you want to know?" We had dinner, he was a real gentleman, and then we went back to his house, drank wine. "What else do you want to know?" She clearly wasn't going to give details unless I insisted. "Where did you have dinner?" I asked. "Actually, at that cute steakhouse around the corner," she replied. I laughed. So it really was his truck that I saw. She told me the details of their night. I kissed her cheek tenderly and said quietly, "Thank you for telling me everything. I know it wasn't easy." She turned her head towards me, smiled slightly, and replied, "I love you too, Brian. Thank you for what you did for me." I was glad to hear these words, but something in her voice worried me. This night, this experiment, seemed to leave us with something more than just physical pleasure. There were some unfinished feelings, something she didn't say.